Namaste to all of you. I'm glad to meet you tonight in this Satsang after a long time back here in the Shiva Hall. So, because we are in this special month of anniversary, where we are talking about the environment of Agama, and because we are preparing for the retreat, which will start in about 2 weeks from now, 10 days from now, the awakening of the Spirit. The awakening of the Spirit is a retreat which people have called very simple the Agama retreat, because it's about Agama, it's about the path of Agama. It's about what can you do in Agama, what's the spiritual path, where does it take you? And it is a declared retreat for reawakening the aspiration of people. One of the problems which older students know is that when you have done yoga for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because of the nature of the mind, some things start becoming a routine, a daily routine. And then, even as a yogi, you can be like a donkey that wakes up in the morning, eats its food, and then starts doing some yoga, but in a mechanical, animal, unconscious, routine way. And we know very well that the practice of yoga with aspiration, that's a very rare word. I don't know many yoga schools who use it, because not many yoga schools look into the spiritual part of yoga. And we all know, the people who study the level 1, they know that there exists a very, very important factor, the number 10 of the yamas and niyamas, the number 5 of the niyamas, called the Ishvara Pranidhana, which most often is translated in English by the mysterious word aspiration. That some people, when they do yoga, they do it with a certain longing, for lack of a better word. They long to do yoga, they have aspiration to do yoga, while for some people this aspiration may be lacking. And then very often we ask ourselves, now then, why do people do yoga? Because the people who have aspiration, it means that maybe they understood something from the philosophy of yoga, from the metaphysics of yoga, and they have a dream. They have a longing for something. If you go to the maximum level, when the first PhD on yoga was written in 1932 or so in Paris, that PhD describing yoga to the Western university environment for the first time, it was called Yoga, Immortality and Freedom. The guy who wrote it, he found these 2 words as defining yoga. What's yoga all about? Yoga is about immortality and freedom. There are so many people. International Yoga Federation says that there are 350 million people who have done yoga in the last 50 years. How many of them have a longing for immortality and freedom? And therefore, we all realize that many people don't know what yoga is. They do yoga for a variety of reasons, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that everybody understands whatever they can out of it. Everybody takes whatever they can out of it. And there are many, many needs. People can have needs for which they do yoga. I'm going to split them even in categories in 5 minutes from now to show that we are aware that yoga can be done for a variety of reasons, most of them, as I said, needs. But there are some people who read about what yoga is, they got informed, they are intelligent enough to understand. Then some people simply dismiss it and they say it's too good to be true. I don't think that this shit works. I don't think it's too big. It's, you know, and then they don't dare to believe in it. And then for them, it's too much. So you cannot say that they are aspiring or longing for that something, simply for the very simple reason that to them, the theory of yoga, the metaphysics of yoga is too far out. And then there are people who do it for a whole plethora of other reasons. That's why there is a big question when you look at yourself, if you do yoga because of curiosity, if you do yoga because of aspiration, or if you do yoga for a need. I have lived in India in various ashrams, where some people lived in an ashram which had been created 100 years ago by somebody whom they didn't know. The so-called yoga practice there was very, very much diluted to the level of a Hindu culture or Hindu religious spirit. And people were living there with their family, with their kids, doing their laundry. The whole ashram was full of washed laundry. People were living with their dog and with their whatever other, with their cat and whatever, you know, and for them, if they wouldn't be in that ashram, they wouldn't have a house, they wouldn't have a place to eat, they wouldn't have a place to sleep. No, they were, you cannot say that those people were there because of aspiration. And if you take it as a need, my goodness, it was a need of a very primitive nature. No, they were in need of some social security, of some comfort, or of a bed to sleep in. No, that doesn't make them yogis, and that doesn't come even close to the metaphysical aspect that some people do yoga because of aspiration. That's why we ask ourselves, you know, when we do yoga, is it a need? Is it still a curiosity that we are still exploring? Or is it an actual longing? It's an aspiration because yoga fulfills something in our lives and we need it. And again, when we say need, it's like we put things on the minus. Like I'm lacking something and I need it. But what about people who don't really lack something and still they do yoga because they feel that yoga gives them something? Then we can see how complex and so great yoga is because it addresses so many sides of the human life. And thus, there are people who do yoga because of their physical needs. That's something which we see very much in yoga courses. There are people who go and get drunk and stoned in Hatrin for the full moon party. And then traditionally, they came to Agama just to detox a little bit. After I have been a pig to myself for one night or 2 nights, then I know that there is a yoga school on the other side of the island where I can do some detox, do some vegetarian diet, stop taking substances, do some asanas and some pranayamas. And it's a need because either organically or psychologically, emotionally, I have the feeling that I have abused myself and now I need to pay a price. I need to compensate. I need to give myself sleep, good food, vitality, and yoga is part of the recipe so that I become whole again. There are people who come to yoga who have this need because of a lot of other physical things. There were people who did yoga because they did not want to take a COVID vaccine, and they thought, rightly so, that yoga is very good for preserving your immune system, for strengthening you, for making you more solar, for make you deal in a more holistic way with your health and with everything. And they did yoga as a sort of reaction to what was happening in the world. There are people who do yoga for a lot of bodily oriented reasons, such as there are people who say, I try to lose weight, and then when I try to lose weight, everybody knows that you can have very easily the yo-yo effect, that you can put your willpower into it for 1 month, and then the next month you lose your willpower and your determination, and then you get back to the previous weight or even higher than that. And then many people would say, okay, we do yoga because yoga gives you the psychological power, the willpower, the stability, the balance in your mind. So when you do things for yourself, then you go slowly, safely, thoroughly, and therefore there are many people who came to yoga along the 20 years here in Kopangan or in other places where we did teach yoga, just because they wanted to lose weight or because they had health problems which the normal medicine was wanting to solve in a very unpleasant way. You know, you are a woman and you have a lump in one of your breasts. And the doctors are very simple. They will cut off your breast, and if you want it, you can spend a few $1,000s extra and get some silicone breasts instead of them. You know, and for the doctors, it sounds like a reasonable solution. Well, we have people who would not contemplate such a solution and would say, over my dead body, you know, like, this is not what I want to be. This is not, can yoga help me with diet, with yoga practice, with pranayama, with this, with that, with combining it with holistic and naturist and alternative therapies and other things so I can deal with this? Yes, and thus, for many people, in various ways, yoga became a physical need. It's very hard to say if these people truly have aspiration, because it is a sort of an aspiration that people say, I want to be healthy. I don't want to be healthy in a schizophrenic, ugly way with blood and surgery and pain and agony and being treated like a Frankenstein monster. You cut apart from it and you put it here, and you cut apart from there and you put it there, and all that bizarre thinking in which people think about a human being like about a robot, that you can have replaceable parts and you can cut from one place, as I said, and put it in another place, which again, up till a certain point, is applicable. Now, there are people who suffered serious burns, and they take a piece of skin from one part of the body and they graft it on the burned part of the body. Again, it's not completely impossible, but when it is taken beyond a certain level, then it becomes a monstrosity, like Dr. Frankenstein's story with his monster. And therefore, in these cases, very often people do yoga more like a need. But if you ask them, well, do you understand where this mountain is going? Like, you are climbing the mountain of yoga. And do you want to go to the top of this mountain? What is yoga for you? For the first PhD academic, yoga was about immortality and freedom. Are you coming to yoga because you would like to give it a shot to reach somehow some degree of immortality and some degree of freedom? Maybe 100% immortality and 100% freedom, if that is even possible? No, for many people then, it starts on the minus. I have a need, I'm having a cancer, and I don't like what the medical science is suggesting to me. I am afraid of the COVID, or God knows what other disease, and I would like to use the naturist approach of the holistic medicine, including with yoga. I want to lose weight, and unfortunately, when I'm trying to lose weight with the chemicals and with other things, I undergo the yo-yo effect, and then it's not good, and the list could continue. And thus, we all know, every yoga teacher who has taught for a while knows that there are people who come to yoga just being needy, and first of all, needy from a physical standpoint. But even at a physical standpoint, there are people who simply have an aspiration. They say, I don't suffer from much. I don't have real serious health problems, because if 2 months ago I had a flu, you cannot seriously call that a problem. No, like you have to look up your belly button to the last milligram of navel fluff to try to invent the thing that because I had a flu, now I had a problem. You know, a flu is not a problem. Everybody had a flu on this planet since the appearance of humanity until today. People were having once a year or once every 2 years a flu, either in the spring or in the autumn or that. So there are people who don't really have any major problem, and then physically they do have an aspiration, because they say, I want a system which should keep me in harmony with myself, with nature, with everything. And I don't think that going to the gym and pumping iron or doing aerobics or something like that will actually solve my problems. Not the way I want it solved. And therefore, even physically, there are some people who have a sort of a longing for a harmonious way of living with yourself, with your body, with the universe, even if they don't suffer from a minus, they don't have a need. But many people come because of those needs. That's at least 25% of the people who come to yoga courses come because, first of all, they had an important physical need of one way or another. Then there are other people who have either this aspiration or this need, this duality, or a curiosity concerning about their daily life. These people are not considering, like others do, that the daily life sucks. Please be aware, on this planet, there are people, and I anticipate here, who look at the daily life and they say, look at the way my mother and father have lived. Look at the way my aunts and cousins and other people have lived. They just worked hard to study. After they studied, they got a job. With that job, they got a wife. With that wife, they got kids. Then, slowly, they became entrenched in that. The kids grew and they ran away from home. Eventually, the famous relationship with your wife or somebody becomes just a polite respect for each other, because without each other would be even worse. You would be feeling lonely and everything. But it's not a great love, a great anything. So you live with somebody who has been your life partner for decades. Your job gets eventually to be flat and boring. Very few people have jobs that when they are 65 years old, they say, I can't quit my job. It's so thrilling because every weekend I fly to the moon and then I come back. I'm an astronaut. And I'm like, how many people have that on this planet? No? And therefore, or again, there are people who may feel lucky in that way. It seems that a fellow like Warren Buffett, he likes to trade stocks and commodities. And he's 80 years old and he can't stop from trading, because he could just stand down and simply say there are people who are 60 years old, they can trade stocks up and down almost as good as I did. But he's passionate. He likes to poke his finger into the stock market. So there are people who might be doing something which is moderately attractive, but then a lot of things are not. And as Buddha noticed, as you get old, you get sick, people die, there is pain, there is existential pain, there is psychological and mental pain, there appears depression, many people are abandoned and lonely, and the list of the human woes could continue terribly much. And that's why there are people who simply think that life as it is on this planet, it sucks. Many people say, if I would have to live the life of my mother or father or uncle or my colleagues from high school, I would commit harakiri at the age of 30. I would prefer to die young and shining, commit a comfortable suicide with carbon monoxide or something which makes you smile when you die, and just fucking go, because why should you stay? For what? What's the big deal? That we all have a conservation instinct and like animals we are just afraid to die. That's just because you are afraid to die, but if you have a bit of guts, then you're not afraid. It's fun while it's fun, and when it's not fun, it's not fun, and that's the end of it. And therefore there are people who try to find a solution to the fact that they would say, who had a great life? Did Ramana Maharishi have a great life? Did Buddha have a great life? Did Jesus have a great life, although they crucified him quite young? Who had a great life? Whose life would you like to have, so that even when you are 80, you smile and you say, this is paradise? Or like Leibniz, the philosopher, who said, this is the best world that there can ever be. It's the best possible world, this one in which we live. And thus what I'm trying to say here is, yes, there are people who hate the daily life of 99.99% of the people on earth, and they find it deadly boring and painful and all the rest. Well, I'm not talking about those right now. I'm talking about the people who think that there is a daily life and you could improve on it. And for such people, sometimes there is a need with yoga. And either it's a medical thing, like, oh, I'm afraid to go to Kopangan because I heard that it's a place where sometimes people get the dengue fever. What if I get the dengue fever and I die? And then people think, okay, I need yoga to strengthen my immune system, but then we get back to the physical things with it. It's still about health. But there are other things in life, like I need to pass an exam. And I haven't been studying since 20 years when I was last in the university, and I need a bit of memory. I remember members of my family who did some university studies or postgraduate studies later in their life. They were taking lecithin, they were taking all sorts of supplements simply because their memory was not how good it was when they were 20. When they were 20, they could study like machines. When they were 40, it was not as easy as that. And therefore, there are people who would like to do things in life, like I want a new job, but I'm afraid, but I have to go to an exam, but I am having panic attacks, but I want to get a new girlfriend, but I don't know how to talk to her and I'm afraid I'll be rejected. And actually I'm very sincere and very loving, and I don't want to miss that opportunity, neither for me nor for her. And 100 other things are there, and therefore there are people who have a need in improving their life. There are people like Ramakrishna who say life, you can crumble it like this and shove it up your own ass. That's what life is. I don't want a life anyway, because life sucks and it's painful. And Buddha, until he was 30-something, he thought that life was fun. And then he saw the dead people, the sick people, the old people, and he suddenly realized, through contrast, that life is not fun at all. That it may have some funny moments, that yesterday you had a great sexual encounter with a new sexual partner, and you are sky high because you say, wow, sex was great. But 30 years from now, it won't matter anymore, and still you are getting back to those bitter things. And therefore, to make the long story short, there are people for whom they consider, okay, life is as it is inevitable, I don't want to commit harakiri in any way, not even in a spiritual way, and because of that, I'm trying to use instruments which will improve my life, improve my memory, improve my concentration, improve my vitality, increase the size of my penis, increase my vitality, as I said, increase God knows what, hyperventilate and get high a little bit or something, and therefore I can use yoga. And therefore, there are people for whom yoga is a need to fulfill a lot of gaps in their lives, because they know that they need a good instrument. And many people know we learn things in school which we never get to use. I'm looking today at the things which I studied in school, and I did a good schooling system, like I did a strong schooling thing, and I cannot say that, I went through school gaining something from that school, no? And what I have learned in that school, I don't remember almost anything today, because I have never got to use those things. And, in the little grades, in the small grades, I was studying binomes and algebra. And what did I do with all that binomial algebra 20 years later? Nothing. Nothing. When I read those books, I remember that I studied such a thing. But what was the use of it? That's why many people say yoga is 100 times more useful than what you learn in school, because there you learn how to deal with your emotions, with your energy, with your mind. You learn how to apply things, how to cleanse your stomach if you ate something slightly poisonous or altered food or something, how to deal with a lot of amazing things. And therefore, many people, again, they don't have an aspiration. There are people who poetically, they say, I want to live my life in a poetic state of harmony. I would like to live my life like a miracle, like a poem. Those people have an aspiration. But for the others, it is very much a need. Like my life has a lot of needs, and I think that yoga is one of the best ways, and we wish that yoga was taught in schools. Many people say, why some of the things of yoga, why are they not taught in primary school and in high school? Because people really should know. They are very, very basic things. The fact that in the second day of yoga, you learn that in the morning, there is a coat of shit on your tongue. And the best thing to do is, as soon as you wake up, you don't swallow saliva or anything, and you go to the bathroom and you scrape your tongue. And a brownish, shitty, ugly thing is coming in big amounts. And you realize that if you didn't do that, you would swallow it and put it back in your stomach, put it back in your system, and never get rid of it. Every morning, you will re-swallow your shit. And then you put some Colgate mint paste in your mouth, and it gives you a feeling like you are like a dragon, and your mouth is clean. There's nothing clean there. There is shit mixed with menthol. And the menthol gives you the feeling that it's clean, but all the rest of the shit is still there. No? So therefore, there are many people who think that such things, such as Kriyas and others, they should be taught in school. They should be known by everybody, because yoga fulfills needs, and sometimes it fulfills the aspiration for a very special life, for a very magic life. And then there are people who think bigger, but already this is a smaller number of people, because these people think about the paranormal and the mystery. Like life could be paranormal. We heard about people who can do remote viewing. We heard about people who allegedly have clairvoyance. We have heard about people who could see the future and the past. We have heard about people who could locate missing persons and know if they are alive or dead. We have known about people who could do astral projection and travel not only on this planet, but even to other planets of our solar system in their astral body, like Emanuel Swedenborg in Sweden and others. And we hear about a lot of things. We hear about the fact that 10 people are trying to give energy with their hands, and the effect is pretty much zero, and that now and then there is a magnificent person who can actually make a difference and give huge amounts of energy and produce very, very spectacular effects. And therefore, people who are a little bit out of the mud, because the rest seem like they live in a mud, they are like buffaloes in a mud pit, up till here in mud, and just enough space to breathe some oxygen still. Like the mud is not up till here, because then you die, but the mud is up till here conveniently, and you live your life in the mud. You eat, you drink, you breathe, you survive, but then there is nothing else. And then there are people who have studied the history of the world, the metaphysics, and a lot of other sources, and they know that on this planet, bigger things have been said. People flying through the air and traveling back and forth in time. People doing amazing things with their mind, with their energy, with their body. And the list could be hugely long. The human science called parapsychology has tried to put them together and to study all those amazing things that have been heard in the human history, that some people could talk to your dead relatives, to people who have passed away, and they still exist but somewhere else, invisible to our eyes and inaudible to our ears. But other people are not into this, and they would be in completely other things. The question is, if we are very flat, it sounds like when we were 14 years old, maybe smoking a joint with some friends, somebody brought it up and you said, you heard about that guy who was levitating in Italy, or that guy who made a parapsychological or radionic machine that they could see images from the past, or, and then maybe I got enthusiastic about it for 10 minutes, like, whoa, because I was high on grass, and I kind of said, wow, that would be cool, Then when I got back, I was wasted. I had to do 100 other things. I forgot about it. I'm 30 years old. Somebody is asking me, why are you interested to, I don't know, what are you doing? You are doing something, and I'm trying to find something really boring. You are selling gasoline in a gas station. You are a gas operator, or you are a seller in 7-Eleven. You are a... And why do you do that? Like, okay, there is this thing that unfortunately people need to put bread and butter on their table, and they are desperate to have a source of income. There are better ways. You can go and work in the stock exchange in New York And if you are really smart, you can make millions, like you don't need to sell in a 7-Eleven or to be a waiter in a restaurant and be tipped by grumpy customers or something like this. People would say, isn't there something bigger to this life? Like there are 3-4 guys who wrote books about the hollow earth theory, that our earth would be hollow inside, and there is an unknown civilization which is hiding from us because they are much superior to us, which lives on the inside of the earth. And they don't want us to know about them, but they know everything about us. And there were people who, in all seriousness, they suggested to spend $3 million to rent a Russian icebreaker from the Russian Navy and to go with 200 people to that spot and to try to see if there is an opening near the North Pole someplace or not. No? Would some people say that's more exciting than working in a 7-Eleven? No, or something like, are there people who would like to live like that? Like life could be a little bit more interesting. There were Tibetan lamas who were running 300 kilometers in one day. And their body was getting so light that travelers in Tibet, when they saw them, they had chains and metal balls attached to their waist and to their legs because their body was becoming too light and they would start flying like the birds and they could not touch the earth to gain speed. To be able to gain speed and push with their legs, to run fast, they had to put metal on their body. So, is this really possible? Did travelers see that? Did several travelers see it separately and they corroborated with each other? Is there a technology by which you can learn to run with metal pieces? Like today, there are people who run ultra marathons and they consider themselves the salt of the earth. But if you would know the Tibetan skill, you could beat all the ultra marathon runners of this planet in 5 days. No, you could you could be way beyond anything which has been done. Is there still somebody who is looking for that? Are there still people who have the power to stand out of the mud and look for the stars? Look for something bigger. There are things which everybody does, and there are rare things which only some people do. Is there a way? There is a chapter in the book of Leadbeater and Annie Besant, in their book about spirituality from the Theosophical House, which is called, I think is the last chapter of their book, which is called simply, I think I saw it first when I was 16 or 17 years old, which is called How to Become Clairvoyant. They simply say, we are clairvoyant, and we can tell you how you could become clairvoyant. Is it possible? It's just like that, because I thought you have to be born. But actually, 2 famous clairvoyants 120 years ago, they wrote a chapter in their book, which is called, the final chapter, which is, okay, if you liked what we told you here, you can be like us. You can be with us. You can be one of us. And here is a chapter which is teaching you how to do that. Because it's possible to transform from a buffalo living in mud up till here. You could fly to the stars. You could do something else with your life. It is so difficult and so rare that people don't even dare to believe in these things. I have seen people who believed it for 3 years, then when you look at them, their body language is like this. They are like oxen bent by a yoke. And they said, yeah, when I was young, I had some moments while I thought, then life is long and hard and da. No, these are people who simply said, I tried for 3 years and then I declared myself defeated. No, I don't expect to go to the stars anymore. I don't expect to do astral projection or psychokinesis or pyrokinesis or levitation, or clairvoyance, or remote viewing, or 120 other things which are listed in the parapsychology books, that they have been measured scientifically, and some of these things are known to exist. Like telepathy has been demonstrated scientifically in that terrible experiments with rabbits and little rabbit kids. Now, we know that there is telepathic transmission of information, but we don't know how it goes, and we don't have telepathic smartphones. We have electromagnetic smartphones, and when you have no electromagnetic signal, your smartphone becomes useless, and in the rest of the time it pollutes you, and there are masts, antennas every 100 meters around, driving us crazy with all this electromagnetic radiation. And is there something else? Does there exist something which is called magic, paranormal, mysterious, and all that? There are people for whom yoga fulfills this need. Like they simply say, no, I don't have a physical problem or a disease. I am not particularly trying to influence my daily life, because I think that daily life to a certain extent is boring and linear, but I would like to see something exceptional in my life, to reach something. The highest spiritual, do you want to be like Ramakrishna or like Buddha? No, I'm not that ambitious, but I would like at least some things to not be linear and to be able to do or to reach, to see something higher than the average. So again, in these cases, we have sometimes people who are in a need, and we have people who have an aspiration. Indeed, we have people who say the human beings are beings of light, right? That was what little Yoda was telling to young Skywalker in the famous episode 5 of the Star Wars. No, when he was telling him, we are beings of light. We are made for something much more. We are not, most people don't have a clue. But then there are the Jedis who were having a clue that there is something more. And some became very, very good, and some became not so good, but at least they were trying to do something there. And therefore, for some people, yoga is fulfilling this need, that if life is just about healing your body, and if life is just about becoming cool and getting some self-confidence when you need to go to an exam and dealing with I don't know what challenge of life, it's still very linear and it's still very boring, and there is not much to do. You work and work and work and make a career and get a job. No, you become an engineer in electronics. You have to learn a lot of things to be an engineer in electronics. Not to mention that electronics is changing every 5 years. And every 5 years you have to update, be completely online with the latest news and so on, because otherwise you become obsolete. No? And you keep learning for your life, and you are in the process, you are getting yourself a house, and you put food on the table. Maybe you have a little family. Then you get old, and then you have to drop everything, lie down, and die. What was the usefulness of all this effort? But people almost don't dare to ask these questions, because they say, hey, why are you so big-headed? Everybody does that. That's what's happening to everybody. I'm trying to put up with it. Yes, if you take it in an absolute way, it's a desperate image about what's happening on this earth. You work and work and work, and when you are 60 years old or 80 years old, you are full of knowledge, full of experience. And many people say, man, if I would have known when I was 20 years old what I know today, My goodness, I would have lived my life in another way. I would have done this or that. So you accumulate something which is very precious, not to mention that you accumulate friends and acquaintances and maybe love relationships if you are lucky enough, and you accumulate some material goods, and then you have to shit on all of it and let go. And if there is reincarnation, it's a tragedy, because it means in 300 years you will come again and you will have the same carrot up your ass. You will get fucked royally again, exactly in the same way. You will start again as a kid and you will work your ass off, and when you will be 80 years old, you will start banging your head against the wall. And then your consolation is to shrug your shoulders and to say, it's like anybody did anything better than that. That's what's happening to everybody. That's what it means to be human. That's what life on earth is. That's completely not what Swami Shivananda or Buddha or other giants of spirituality have said. They have said, if you believe in that, you go in that hole. You go in the outer darkness. You die like an idiot. Swami Shivananda said, you die like a worm. You live like a worm and you die like a worm, not realizing that you could be something else. And therefore, at least people who don't want the pill of immortality and freedom, at least they want something unusual. They want to say, in this life, I could see the future. I could have visions of the future. I could see Akasha, images from the past. I could fly through the air. I could lay my hands on some people and their pain disappeared in 30 seconds. I could do this. I could do, at least I was not a boring gasoline seller in a gas pump. I was not a boring accountant in an office. I did not live this worm life. No, at least I tried to be different. I tried to be exceptional. I tried to play my life. No, at least do something wild, make $30 million until you are 30 years old, then become a pensionist, retire when you are 30, and live your life wildly, living on the investment from those $30 million. You know, at least, but do something different for God's sake. Why be a lemming and do what everybody else does when you see where it leads them? You see, it's just graveyards over graveyards over graveyards. That's the end line of the society and of the civilization. No, that's all there is. People like Buddha and like Ramana Maharishi and the like, they said no. That's the terrible illusion that 99.99% of our neighbors, of our fellow men, they are like oxen. They just put their head down with a heavy burden on their neck and they just step forward. They are like working in a salt mine under the earth. They are like condemned prisoners in a prison. They just walk the walk of the doomed. And at least with the search for paranormal, mysterious, parapsychological, whatever you want to call it, mystery, at least people are trying to be a bit more unusual. Go and find if there is a hollow earth, even if it costs you your life. It's better to die searching for the hollow earth than to work in an accounting station somewhere, you know, and just calculate, count the money for Shell Oil. You know, you are one of the ants which works in the accounting office of Standard and Poor or of whatever, one of these giants of money. You know? And in this way, you know, you say, no, I'm independent, I opened a business. Oh, sure. You opened a bakery at the corner of your street, and all your life you wondered if you can bring ends together. I'm selling pretzels to the whole world, and I'm selling apple pie. and I'm desperate if in the end of the month I got $1,000 extra so I can pay my house rent and my electricity or something, you know. That's still very linear. That's still very boring. And some people want some of this extraordinary color. And then yoga is covering also. For some people it's a need. They say, I need to do this thing because otherwise my life is driving me crazy. And for some people it's an aspiration. Some people say, if there are gods, as the ancient Greeks said, or the ancient Hindus, and so many ancients have said that in this universe there exist gods and spirits, I would like to go and see them. I would like to communicate with them. I would like to be in touch with them, because at least that would not be a banal, boring, flat life in this way. And then, of course, there are the people for whom there is even more than that. And these are the people who get to the levels of existential and spiritual questions, because they can still say, I don't have a physical need. I don't have a need to fix my life because I think that life is deadly boring and it sucks. The life of people around me. I don't want anyone's. People say, wouldn't you like to have the life of, I don't know, I mentioned Warren Buffett, or, you know? No, honestly not. There are people like me who would not want to have the life of a person, even if that person is rich or famous or something. And therefore, there are people who don't want this life. They don't want to just improve their life. I want some quality in my life, yeah. Then there are people who, even the paranormal, they say, yeah, but I have read the life stories of many people who are clairvoyants. Like I mentioned, the Theosophical House with Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a clairvoyant Russian woman. And there are so many others. She's not the only example. I just pick up one example because it came up. You know, she didn't die very happy and very fulfilled. She was clairvoyant. She produced books which she wrote from the invisible worlds, like the stanzas of Zion and other such things, you know. And so what? No? In the end, when Ramakrishna looks at Helena Blavatsky, says, what's the big deal of being clairvoyant or healing with your hands or God knows what? Because even those, in the end, they are a little bit more colorful than the average Tom, Dick, and Harry on the street, but it's not enough. It's still, you are still a hamster in a circle. You are still a hamster in a cage. You are just a hamster which is orange in color. And everybody says most of the hamsters are brown, but look at that one, it's orange. Oh my God. In the end, you've been an orange hamster or a brown hamster, it's still a hamster. And therefore, there are people who look at this issue in a much more radical way. And they simply say, is there no other way of living? Like there were people like Buddha, who was a prince in a city, and then he just shook himself like a maniac. He ran away, and he became something else. He became something which people criticized. He became something which people were afraid of. He became something which people mistrusted. He became something else, definitely, and Buddha was happy to be the new Buddha. When he was Prince Gautama, he didn't realize, but when he realized, then he didn't want to be that thing anymore. And thus, there is also the level where some people simply say, I don't want even the life of a paranormal person. I don't want to be a magician, not a stage magician, but a real magician. I don't want to be a clairvoyant or this. If I could see the future or something, that would be fun. but that would not be enough. I want that as a bonus, as an extra bonus, it's fine. But if my life is only about that, then again, it's still not exceptional enough. And then we find that in the history of humanity, in every religion, in every culture, almost in every country, definitely on every continent, there have been people who lived an enchanted life, an existential life different, in which they were chasing those two words, immortality and freedom. Is it possible to be a citizen of the planet Earth and in a certain plane of your being to reach a condition of immortality, like death does not exist for you, maybe not physically, but in some other way, there is a continuity of consciousness? Is it possible that being a citizen of the planet Earth, there is a state of freedom? Because everybody seems to be the prisoner of something. You are the prisoner of family, you are the prisoner of social conventions, you are the prisoner of the financial system of this world, you are the prisoner of your human nature and your human body, you are a prisoner of a lot of things. Would it be possible that some people, although they look like you and me, and they pretend to be human, when they are like Jesus or like Ramakrishna or like Shivananda or like Buddha, they are something else, they have reached something else? And here again, there is a need for some people who feel very empty. They feel my life is empty, and existentially, it's like everything is so boring and so dull. And then there are people who are on the plus. They are not, the need is on the minus. But then on the plus, there are people who simply long for something. And they say, I don't know why, my cousins, my brothers, my siblings, none of them dares to dream. None of them dares to hope. But I don't know why for me, there is something big inside my soul. There is a very big room inside my soul, and in that big room there is space for a great dream. I actually dare to dream. And people who are my friends or colleagues, they say, aren't you a bit crazy? Isn't that a little bit too much? Or what? And I dare to hope. And this is where the final degree of aspiration comes, because I don't have the aspiration to live in a harmonious, holistic physical body. I don't only have the aspiration to have a harmonious life, to live some sort of enchanted life. I don't have the aspiration to go to the stars and talk to the gods, but I have the aspiration for immortality and freedom. I have the aspiration for something which is radically different, which makes the whole difference. And people are looking at me and they are saying, how do you dare hoping for that? This is what the extreme people in yoga, not everybody, but the extreme people in yoga, they want to give it a try. They have that longing. And that's why in yoga we talk very much about what is your aspiration, because everybody can learn to do Padahastasana. Some people do a good Padahastasana, some people do a poor Padahastasana, but everybody can do a Padahastasana, poor quality or great quality. The question is, what aspiration is in your soul? What are you trying to achieve? And that's where the real yoga is starting. That's why on August 23, we have the annual time where we try to refresh this story of aspiration, try to remember who we are, what do we do in a yoga school, why do we practice yoga? Are we people who are just needy, or are we people who have an aspiration of a sort? And we are going to search our hearts for what is this aspiration. I hope this evening has generated for you some questions of looking at yourself and saying, how much do I do yoga because of a need? How much do I do yoga because of an aspiration? What kind of needs I have? What kind of aspiration I have? And in that way, I hope you can evaluate and dose your yoga better so that you fulfill the needs in your life. It's always very important that we know ourselves, we know who we are, we know what we are looking for, and in that way we can adjust our practice, we can adjust our lifestyle. Poor Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi, he was looking for a way out of hell because he had caused the death of 35 people or more, and he thought, if I die with a karma of 35 dead people, I go straight to hell. I go to very unhappy places for a long, long time. And that's why Milarepa, in the beginning, he was needy. He was scared shitless. But that was a very good fear because it saved his life. It saved him from going to hell. And eventually, it made him reach the part with the immortality and freedom. So he gained much, much more than he bargained for. In the same way, I hope you will give yourself time once a week or once a month to just sit with your cup of tea and think a little bit, what is my aspiration? Do I still hope? Do I still have a great soul in my chest? Do I still dare to think big? What are my needs? And what is the nature of the life which I'm living? I think this is more important than learning Padahastasana. Everybody can learn Padahastasana. Today, the artificial intelligence will build robots who can do Padahastasana better than you and I, and for longer time. The problem is not to do Padahastasana. The problem is your soul, your mind. What aspirations and needs are you nourishing? I hope it is enough for tonight. I wanted to speak around this aspiration of how many types it is, and that for some people it's a very radical thing in which they turn against the world and against life itself, while for some people it is more moderate, and at least they try with their aspiration to fulfill legitimate goals in their life, in their health and healing, and why not even in the search of the great mysteries and of the paranormal. I hope it gives you thoughts for it, and I hope to see all of you, or some of you at least, in the retreat which we do 10 days from now, or 13 days from now, because there we will spend 5 days, 6 days, all the time working on this aspiration, practice with aspiration, remember who we are, where do we come from, what we are searching for, and what the great souls of this planet have discovered about those things. Thank you all for joining tonight in this short satsang, and I hope to see you further in our activities. I'm not sure if there is a satsang next week, but apparently on the calendar there is one, right? So we'll be talking more about issues of the yoga practice. Thank you all for joining.